the things that you highlight is like the difficulty of happiness assessment, the difficulty of happiness verification. So one might think that asking yourself the question, am I happy, is a straightforward enough or easy enough question to answer, but you highlight certain reasons for which that might not necessarily be the case. So maybe to set us up for this discussion, could you highlight some of those reasons to which you adverted and maybe deepen some of those insights about how it's hard, in the 21st century, here and now, for us to pose this question and to answer this question?
Well, we all have some knowledge of ourselves, but our knowledge of ourselves is often very unreliable. We know a lot of things, but we're not necessarily aware of everything that at some level we know. We don't connect the dots. Making us aware of some things that deep down we really do know, and helping people connect the dots is really the method of this book. I start with common opinion, like Aristotle did, like even Thomas Aquinas did, and I try to put those dots together. So, it's very easy for a person to not know whether he is happy or not. Oftentimes, people are bitterly unhappy, but aren't really aware of it. It may be obvious to everybody around them, but it isn't obvious to them. It's even possible, I think, to be happy and not to be thinking about it, not to be aware of it. And as a matter of fact, if we're just asking ourselves obsessively all the time, am I happy yet? Am I happy yet? That's not really a path to happiness. But sometimes, an example I give in the book, I borrowed this one from C.S. Lewis. A married couple might be talking together and chatting about a period much earlier in their lives when they were newly married and they were having children. And they were so busy that they never thought about it, whether they were happy. But they reflect on it and they say to each other, we were happy then. And they were right, but they didn't think about it at the time. And that's not a flaw. That's not a problem. We don't have to be thinking about it all the time, although we do need some knowledge of this so that we don't take wrong turns. I think another thing that confuses people is that we assume that happiness is the same as good feelings, pleasure. And so we'll be having some good feeling and we say, I'm happy. Or not having that good feeling and say, I'm unhappy now. That's really not the same thing. It's connected with happiness, but it isn't the same topic.
So thinking about the difference between the way that happiness registers, for a rock, for a plant, for an animal, for a human being, for an angel, for God. I don't know the degree or extent to which one could say that rocks are happy or plants are happy or animals are happy, except insofar as they attain to a certain end, whether that's automatic or instinctual or whether that's something that need to be striven for. That aside, for us as human beings, it seems like a modicum of awareness, a modicum of attention is necessary for happiness. And yet, like you adverted to, you can recognize the fact that you were happy afterwards. So like this interplay of living our lives and then reflecting upon our lives seems bound up with the question of happiness. To what extent do you think like sustained discourse about happiness is an integral feature of the happiness itself? Or is it just necessary as a way by which to identify, to like earmark the experience as having been happy?
Well, I think that happiness is the highest activity of our highest power. What is our highest power? Our highest power is our rational power. It's our intellective power. And so our happiness is not something that an animal can experience because it doesn't have that power at all. It can flourish, and by analogy, we can say the dog is happy. But he's not happy in the sense that we understand a human being to be happy. Now, what is the activity of this rational power? That makes it sound as though we're sitting around in a seminar room and talking with each other. What is happiness? And that's the supreme happiness right there. I don't think so. I think that for the mind to behold the truth is what really is the highest activity of the mind. And that's not just something that we're reasoning out like proving theorems. That's when we're actually beholding something. You might say the delight of the eyes is to see something beautiful. The delight of the mind and the delight of the heart is to see the truth and behold it. Now, I think we're not going to really fully experience that unless we are among the redeemed, seeing the face of God in himself because he's the highest object of the mind, and we can't even see him as he is in himself in this life. That's going to require the supernatural elevation of our powers. But then we'll be so totally happy in this vision that there can be nothing further to be desired. But even in this life, um, how else is the happiness of this life connected with reason? Well, we need to direct our lives according to reason. We need to, if the happiness of this life is incomplete, it's imperfect, it's interrupted. But such as it is, I think more than anything else, it requires the virtues. And it requires something for the virtues to work with. I'm not going to be able to think carefully, gee, how can I feed my family unless I have something to feed them with? But to plan our lives, to exercise the virtues, to have justice, to have virtue, to have courage, to have temperance, to live our lives in this rational pattern that hangs together and makes sense for a rational being like ourselves, who is aimed at the truth, that's its highest good. That's necessary for the happiness of this life.